Deconstruction. Let's review some terms. Construct. To put together substances or parts or assemble. To deconstruct the context of a text is to consider its purpose, that is, what it's trying to achieve. Deconstruction, or putting a concept or a word under erasure, is a political act. It reveals the generally invisible but repressive politics of any particular forms of representation. Now, what is deconstruction? Deconstruction is a specialist term that has not entered into everyday language to any large extent. However, we can understand the broad meaning of the term by looking at its two parts. De implies reversal or removal, and construct, meaning to put something together. To deconstruct, something is to take apart, to unconstruct it. In social theory, deconstruction refers to the process of taking apart concepts and meanings. More specifically, deconstruction is a form of critical thinking about social relations that involves questioning the meaning of words or concepts that normally go unquestioned. According to Holloway, a form of analysis which exposes the multiplicity of possible meanings, contradictions, and assumptions underlying our understandings and ways of knowing. Now let's go to theoretical background. Jacques Derrida and the theory of deconstructionism. The process of deconstruction derives from the work of a French post-structuralist language theorist called Jacques Derrida. For Derrida, meaning in language is ruled by the principle of difference. This principle declares that meaning in language can never be finally fixed, that there is no final meaning we can give to any one word. Meaning depends on differences between words and images, or signifiers, and so can only be relational, not essential or inherent. Meaning is constantly in the process of deferral or deference to the moment when new meanings are constructed. These new meanings are constructed through changing relations of difference between signifiers that are reconstructed. Deconstruction can be used to help children understand the politics of their day-to-day relations with each other and in the world about them. This may include the gender, race, class, and disability politics of their daily life and the world about them. Deconstruction can be used to examine the politics and power relationships present in children's relationships with each other to imagine other possibilities. Examine the politics in a story they read to imagine their possibilities. Examine the politics and the images about them to imagine other possibilities. Examine the politics of the knowledge and of the world about them and imagine other ways to understand the different forms of knowledge. Examine the politics and current events of their local community to imagine other possibilities. Examine the politics in television program and videos they watch to imagine other possibilities. Now, for developmental considerations, deconstruction is a teaching technique that relies on symbolic language. It is therefore suitable to use with children who have reached a stage in their language development and who have the ability to talk about what words mean. Staff can also work with children to deconstruct the gender politics of their relations with each other by uncovering children's meanings of being a girl or a boy, offering children alternative meanings of being a girl or a boy, examining with the children the assumptions they have about what it means to be a boy or a girl, exploring with children who benefits from assumptions they have about being boys and or being girls, talking with children about the extent to which their understandings mean that boys or girls have more power and the extent to which this is fair or not fair. Disability and additional needs. Discriminatory and offensive ideas about disability can also be deconstructed. Staff can teach children to deconstruct their understanding of disability by first, uncovering children's meaning of being disabled and not being disabled, offering children alternative meanings of being disabled and not being disabled, examining with children the assumptions they have about disability and ability, exploring with children who benefits from their assumptions about disability, talking with children about the extent to which their understandings of disability means that people without disabilities have more than those with disabilities, and the extent to which this is fair or not fair. Now next is documenting. Now we have terms such as document, a piece of paper, booklet, etc., providing information. Documentation in the form of observation of children and extensive record keeping has long been encouraged and practiced in many early childhood programs. Documentation, or the written descriptions, transcriptions of children's words, photographs, and now the videotapes become an indispensable source of material that we use every day to be able to read and reflect critically the project we're exploring. Now let's ask the how of documenting. Katz and Chard argued that staff should document children's learning when children are engaged in absorbing complex, interesting projects worthy of documentation. The decision about what to document should arise from consultation between staff over what they deem to be worthwhile learning projects. Increasingly, there is an interest in children being consulted as part of this decision-making process. Once staff and/or children decide what specific project work will be documented, they need to set aside time for careful observations of children learning throughout the project. Along this, they need to develop techniques for recording, organizing, and displaying their observations. There are many techniques staff can use to record their observation of children's learning, including: Number 1. Photographing children's work, including the use of digital camera photographs of children's drawings, sculptures, paintings, buildings, and other constructional work. There are many techniques staff can use to record their observations of children's learning, including: Number 1. Photographing children's work, including the use of digital camera photographs of children's drawings, sculptures, paintings, buildings, and other constructional work. Children can assess in this process. Number 2. Making written observations of children's work, including recording children's language. 3. Audio recording children's comments and conversations. Number 4. Making overhead transparencies of children's representations. 5th. Video recording the process and products of children's learning. Number 6. Transcribing children's comments and observations. Number 7. Collecting a portfolio of children's work. Tripenter Street highlighted a number of advantages of using digital camera to document children's project work and the learning they gain from it. They point to the many ways in which digital camera and photographs it produces can be used in project work. They include the following. Number 1. Immediately printing photos taken of children's work in a specific area or on a specific day allows staff and children to discuss what has happened almost as it happens. Printing digital photos is cheaper than conventional photographs, and so it is possible to build a store of photos of project that children can revisit and use in their project work. Transparencies can be made of digital photographs and using an overhead projector projected to all children to revisit work and discuss progress. Fourth and last, the classroom book is easily made via A4 prints of the photos that can be used to help children sequence the learning that has occurred during the project and support emergent literacy learning. Videotaping children's learning offers a rich source of information about their language and interactions. However, revisiting videotape can be time-consuming, and staff should bear this in mind if they choose to use it as part of their documentation process. Videotaping can also be used to revisit moments with parents and children. After the information on children's learning has been recorded, staff must interpret and organize it in ways that explain children's learning. Theoretical background for Loris Malaguzzi in the pre-primary schools of Reggio Emilia. In this approach to early childhood education, children's learning is supported and enriched through in-depth, short and long-term project work in which responding, recording, playing, exploring, hypotheses building, and testing and provoking occurs. For instance, Walls and other spaces are used to exhibit the children's work to others. The documentation is seen as integral to the children's learning and provides them with a reference source of what they have done and a source of information to provoke additional learning. Next is the when and why of documenting. Documenting can be used as a teaching technique to support and enrich children's learning in a variety of ways. Specifically, documentation can be used by staff to develop and deepen children's interest and curiosity in a project, deepen children's understanding about their own learning. Number 3, support children's metacognitive learning by enabling them to revisit their ideas and view them from different perspectives. 4th, stimulate children's interest and curiosity in each other's interests, techniques, learning. And number 5, in achievements. Number 6, encourage children to plan and work together. Enable children to revisit their own learning. Encourage collaboration between parents, staff, and children. Help build communities of learners. Make visible to the children their own learning journey. Enable children to examine their own thinking and the thinking of others in a project. Encourage children to shape their own learning environment. Help children gain a sense of history and evoke children's memories of past experiences. Developmental considerations. Documentation of children's learning is relevant for children of all age groups and for learning across all developmental domains. However, children's ability to make sense of different forms of pictorial and written documentation will vary. The younger the child, the more important it is to present information to them in a concrete way. Disability and additional needs. Staff can check against disability bias in their documentation work by ensuring that: Number 1, children with and without disabilities in the group have an equal opportunity to have their work valued through documentation. Number 2, projects, themes, or topics chosen for documentation challenge rather than reinforce disability stereotypes. Number 3, the techniques chosen to record observations are inclusive and sensitive to children with varying abilities. Number 4, the interpretations of children's learning display disability awareness and sensitivity. 5th, the presentation of children's projects and learning are accessible to parents, staff, and children of varying abilities and disabilities. Children with and without disability should have an equal opportunity to have their work valued through documentation. If staff regularly monitor whose work is being documented, they can identify any inequalities. If any inequalities do exist, staff can take steps to ensure that children with disabilities are represented in future documentation. Equal representation is much easier to manage when a child attends a center regularly. The techniques chosen to record observations need to be inclusive and sensitive to children with varying abilities. For example, if children have a disability that makes sharing their ideas, thoughts, and feelings through speech difficult, they may communicate via sign language, body language, or communication aids that enhance their speech. In such instances, recording children's learning through tape recording is likely to be less valuable than a video camera. The tape recorder may miss most of what a child communicates and thus makes revisiting it difficult. On the other hand, video recording could capture the complex and varied nonverbal ways in which a child may express themselves through dance, movement, facial expressions, sign language, and visual arts such as painting and collage. Next chapter is empowering. Now we have words such as empower, which is to give the ability to enable or permit, and to give or delegate power or authority. The objectives of empowerment should contribute to social justice and ensure positive discrimination in favor of the underprivileged to ensure equity. Empowerment rests on the belief that we should all be able to participate in the practice of freedom and discover how to participate in the transformation of our world. Now, what is empowering? To empower means to give others the power or ability to do something. In everyday usage, empowering is often used to describe the process of giving someone the power to do something on our behalf. For example, we might empower someone to sign checks in our place, or empower someone to take decisions about what to do if our dog becomes ill when we are away on holidays. While empowerment can be used to describe any transfer of power, it most often refers to the transfer of cultural, political, economic, and social power between people. In this usage, empowerment is a process of giving greater cultural, economic, social, and political power to those who have little access to such opportunities because of injustice and inequalities in a particular society. The aim of empowerment is to create greater social justice. As Bai Zitinki explained, empowerment is a process by which oppressed persons gain some control over their lives by taking part with others in development of activities and structures that allow people increased involvement in matters which affect them directly. Put simply, people are empowered when they have the resource and independence to direct their own lives in a way that they are free from discrimination and oppression. As a teaching technique, empowerment is both a general and a specialist usage. In general usage, empowerment as a teaching technique involves giving children the power or ability to do things. For example, giving children the ability to decide which experiences they want to participate in or when they have milk and fruit. They believe that empowering children means staff will provide them with the following power or abilities: the knowledge, skills, and attitudes fostered by the curriculum to, number 1, take increasing responsibility for their own learning and care. Second, continue learning with an enhanced sense of self-worth, identify confidence and enjoyment. Number 3, contribute their own special strengths and interests. Fourth, learn useful and appropriate ways to find out what they want to know. And last is understand their own individual ways of learning and being creative. Freire believed that teachers can do this through praxis. Praxis is a process through which people take informed action to create human liberation, and it is based on developing a critical, self-reflective form of knowledge. Praxis involves linking teaching actions with critical knowledge of and reflection of these actions, producing a critical evaluation of teaching that informs what is done next. Put it, curriculum is not simply a set of plans to be implemented, but rather is constituted through an active process in which planning, acting, and evaluation are all reciprocally related and integrated into the process. Praxis describes how staff process information about the daily actions of teaching, try to solve problems encountered in teaching, and then decide the best way forward. Praxis involves staff to exploring the gap between intention and actuality in their teaching, making explicit and deliberate choices after examining their options, recognizing the conflicts and contradictions in their teaching and resolving them in ways that empower children. Ideally, in critical approaches to education, curriculum content is developed in collaboration with students. According to Freire, such collaboration should arise in and through students and teachers confronting real problems in their daily lives. He called this a problem-posing approach to education and contrasted it with traditional education, which he believed used a banking approach to education. In the banking concept of education, the scope of action allowed to students extend only so far as receiving, filing, and storing deposits. The teacher makes the deposits, which the students patiently receive, memorize, and repeat problem-posing education. Student becomes critical co-investigators in dialogue with the teacher. Now, let's talk about the how of empowering. Empowerment involves transferring power from one group to another in order to create greater social justice and equity between groups in a particular society. This transference of power should give the less powerful a greater ability to control and participate in decisions about their lives. To achieve this transference of power with young children, staff need to, number 1, decide what skills children need to experience greater control and participation in their learning. Second, choose teaching and learning techniques that enable children to experience greater control and participation in their learning. Last is choose content that is compatible with the goals of greater equity and justice underpinning empowerment. Content compatible with equity, justice, and empowerment. Much of the traditional curriculum content for young children has developed over time to serve the interests of particular groups of people. There are therefore biases built into this content, and staff need to learn and recognize them. These biases will be evident in the children's literature, music, dance, maths, and science resources. In working to empower children, staff should choose curriculum content that ensures that what is learned and taught is fair and just as possible. This involves integrating equity issues into the content of what is taught through the topics, themes, stories, and songs that staff introduce children to. Staff also need to evaluate the information about their social world contained in the formal and informal discussions between children and themselves. These discussions can contain information about various forms of inequalities and injustice in the daily lives of the children, and they can be ignored. Now, next is when and why to empower. To empower children, staff must be committed to creating a more just social world through transferring power from more powerful groups to less powerful groups. The commitment should be built from an understanding of how power is currently distributed in a given society at specific points in time, and an understanding of the connections between the wider social and political context of their work and their daily lives with the children in specific centers. To use empowerment as a teaching technique, staff must want to change the current distribution of power between different groups in society. They must have a belief that unequal and unjust power relationships currently exist between specific groups of people in their society and want to change this. Some questions to prompt staff's thinking about their commitment to social change. Disability and additional needs. Make the different abilities of the children visible via the curriculum. Music and movement can be used to make people with disabilities audible and visible. For example, the words walking and running can be changed to moving in songs such as Run Sister Run. Next, enable all children to experience the richness and diversity of different parts of the curriculum. Movement can be used to ensure that constructive, open, and sensitive attitudes develop about the children's own bodies and those of others. All children move in their own way, so don't feel that dance is an elitist art. Last is provide opportunities for children to express their own individuality and life experiences via a variety of curriculum experiences. For example, painting and drawing offer an opportunity to draw and paint images of oneself. It is important that children with disabilities or children have parents with disabilities are encouraged and feel able to depict their bodies as they are not feel they need to reproduce images of able-bodied people. And the last chapter is philosophizing. Now we have words such as philosophy, the rational investigation of being, knowledge and right conduct. Philosophizing, to make philosophizing speculations. Children are natural philosophers, and their curiosity sparks off philosophical discussion. What distinguishes humans from other animals is their ability to think, to reason, and to wonder. The role of the educator is one of moving young children towards solving their own problems through active exploration, discovery, and reflection. Now, what is philosophizing? Broadly speaking, philosophy is the study of truth. In studying truth, philosophers seek answers to questions such as, what do we know to be true? What is truth? How do we know this is true? How can we prove this is true? To answer these questions, philosophers have to carefully look at, try to understand, and to evaluate what we claim to be true about our world. They critically examine and take apart our truth claims to see if they are indeed true. For example, when scientists claim that the Earth is round, the philosopher of science examines this truth claim and critically asks, how do we know that the Earth is round? How can we prove that this is true? Are the methods we use to prove that the Earth is round the right methods to get to the truth? Philosophers ask us questions of all areas of knowledge about our social world. For example, philosophers can study the truth of medicine, geography, religion, psychology, mathematics, education, law, history, and ethics. Dehan et al. Detailed a 15-point plan for initiating and guiding philosophical discussions in groups with young children. Their guidance builds from the work of Matthew Lipman, and the following points draw heavily on these guidance. For a theoretical background, philosophical issues and discussions are generated with young children through narrative forms such as picture books, poems, and stories. Workbooks with practical resources and exercise help guide teachers and children through their philosophical inquiries. The key aim of doing philosophy with children is to help them to become critical thinkers. Children learn critical thinking by inquiring, reasoning, forming concepts, and communicating meanings to others in what Lipman calls a community of inquiry. A community of inquiry operates in democratic principles. Matthew Lipman is an American educator who has developed an approach called Philosophy for Children. Through this work, Lipman has generated international interest, and these are the hallmarks of Lipman's approach. Lipman pointed out that there are several misconceptions about what constitutes critical thinking and argued that critical thinking is not about drilling children in how to think, and the same as logical thinking. When choosing stimulus material, consider the following questions. Will the materials encourage the children to wonder about the issue or dilemma? For example, are there surprises in the storyline or image? Or is more than one solution to the problem shown? Next is, will the materials extend or challenge children's current understandings of the issue? Stimulus materials that generate philosophical discussions are those in which children have an active interest and in which there are puzzles, issues, dilemmas, and problems to be solved. When deciding which questions to use to help children learn to think philosophically, Dehan et al. Recommended using a wide variety of open-ended questions that challenge children to solve problems and seek innovative ways of viewing the world. Next is the when and the why for philosophizing. Who they are and their place in the world. How the world works and how we relate to each other. What is fair, good, and right in the world. Think creatively. Use words to express their thoughts, understand different viewpoints in the world, and ask questions and search for answers. Philosophizing with children enriches and extends their cognitive skills and help to build a strong disposition for curiosity and collaborative inquiry. Such dispositions are important across all areas of learning and across all disciplines. Specifically, philosophizing with young children is appropriate when staff wants them to learn to be curious about. For example, preschool children's self-portraits show an interest in themselves and how we represent what we look like to others. Their paintings of their families show an interest in who their family is and what families do. And their paintings of their local community shows an awareness of the world about them. Children's self-portraits can be used to provoke the questions, who am I? Children can be encouraged to think about the questions, how do I know this is me? What other things apart from me, how I look, make me? What is the same about me and the other children? What is different about me that makes me who I am? Children in the early years of schooling can be supported in their critical reasoning skills through language arts programs which have the following features. In addition, children's critical thinking skills will be improved by learning that everyday words have more than one meaning. Word games, puns, and nonsense books helps with this. Wing and Lamb identified 10 philosophical questions that could be explored with young children. They were as follows. Number 1. Why do we exist? How can we be sure that everything is not a dream? Can we make time stand still? What makes us human? What does it mean to be alive? Am I the same person as when I was a baby? Why should I be kind to animals? Should I be good when no one is watching? What is a friend? And what is art? Fisher offers the following philosophical questions that have been used with children in primary schools in the UK to help children engage in philosophical thinking. Number 1. How do you know you're not dreaming at this moment? How do you know when something is true or not? Is an apple dead or alive? Is it right to eat animals? What is the difference between pretending and living? What is the difference between a real person and a robot? Is there a difference between your mind and your brain? Can animals think? Is it ever right to tell lies? What are the most valuable things in your life?